Linux, the open source operating system that me and probably you use every day for your daily tasks, but what makes it truly useful in the first place for anyone to use, both in the desktop and server world? Well, I'll answer that today as we will find out what makes Linux truly useful for everybody. So, we might as well get into this immediately by going with what most people use Linux for, on the personal side of things, on rather a personal desktop or laptop on your choice. It actually supports more devices than any other operating system in the world, like for example Windows and definitely Mac, because of its variety of hardware support compared to proprietary operating systems. This is mostly due to Linux being open source under the GPL license, which means that anybody can use the source code as long as it stays open source in general, and plus the Linux kernel itself is actually pretty lightweight, so this actually opens up the floodgates to build Linux on any hardware you want, kind of like Doom. So this can literally range from supercomputers to Raspberry Pis. We also gotta add on the fact when it comes to the lightweight aspect that it's also very good when it comes to gaming, because most distros can actually run better than Windows due to the less system overhead you have due to it being less bloated and not having as much bullshit in it. Like for example, Steam's Proton, which mind you is not even native, it's a compatibility way of forked out wine, really makes everything run better compared to Windows out there. Though not all games are supported, like for example ones like kernel level anti-cheats. You can check on some websites out there, but this also makes it that way hardcore gamers can really squeeze every single bit of FPS out there. I'm not really a hardcore gamer myself, I'm more casual, but it's still a really good thing for those type of people out there. That's why more handheld gaming devices, like for example the Steam Deck and the Lenovo Legion Go, actually run Linux compared to Windows with like usual options, especially SteamOS, which is Steam's own operating system, which is actually based on Arch Linux. So let's see how that actually goes in the future. Linux is also known to be very reliable on top of being stable, which is very important with its servers. So that way Linux absolutely dominates the server world for the past like 15 years with 98% of the market share. And actually all supercomputers out there, like the top 500 supercomputers, run Linux. And actually, you know, Microsoft Azure, their own cloud platform, kind of like AWS, more of their servers run on Linux compared to their own operating system Windows, which really proves how much more useful it is compared to those proprietary operating systems. But we have more to talk about besides that. But we also have to consider customizability, because unlike Windows and especially Mac, Linux allows you to customize everything. And of course for like if you're new to Linux, you can go with a distro like Linux Mint, which gives you a very Windows-like desktop environment out of the box with Cinnamon, or even a Mac one for ones like Elementary OS if you're into Mac for some reason. But if you decide to play around with the terminal and the lightest bit, you can actually customize your system to be anything you want. You can even get inside the guts of the operating system to fully customize it from the inside out. You've had your own custom version of the kernel. Like for example, not every Linux distro out there runs like a new core utils, like for example Alpine, but there's also for example Atomic Desktops, which allows the operating system for the kernel levels, like for example the main system folders, to not really be customized. Like for example SteamOS and Vanilla OS does this. But there's also distros out there that allow you to customize everything straight down to the kernel itself. Or for example, more customizability friendly distros out there, like for example Arch and Gentoo, where you can really get inside the guts of the operating system. But Gentoo is kind of more fair about this due to having more freedom, due to the fact that you have to decompile everything. Though it does take like way longer. Some people even take like weeks or so. Sweet Jesus. But I really recommend going with Arch, even if you have to use like Arch install, because there's no way I'm going for that install process. How about using Devil? We also have to consider privacy. Unlike proprietary operating systems where they take your data from you, even ones like Apple, even though they advertise otherwise, most Linux systems don't do this and have total privacy, so Linux can improve your OPSEC by a lot. But some even take it even further, like for example Cubes or Tails OS that doesn't allow for USB formatting or Unix VMs, but I'll save this for another video. This is mostly because the open source community does not really like spyware inside their programs, because that kind of removes the freedom. So of course some distros aren't like this, like for example Deepin or Ubuntu back when they had that Amazon partnership. But it's rather that no same person ever uses these distros, or they've been gone for years at this point. But this still makes Linux the best option that you can go when it comes to improving your OPSEC. But now we have to finally explain the final thing of what makes Linux truly useful. Freedom. Due to it being open source, you can do whatever you want with no limits. Though throughout the distros, you can do any one that you want at your choosing, due to it being open source and being free for you to use under the GPL license. And all the things I explained today would not be possible without being open source. So free and open source software, including the Linux kernel itself, is what the core is and what makes Linux truly useful. And keep using Linux, my brothers, and have a wonderful day.